You've felt this before. Someone questions you. Maybe it's your choice, your decision, or just the way you live your life. And without even thinking, you start explaining yourself. You give reasons. You list examples. You try to make them understand. You want them to see that you're not wrong, that you're not crazy, that what you did makes sense. But here's what happens. The more you explain, the more they question. The more reasons you give, the more they find holes. And suddenly, you're standing there tired, frustrated, wondering why you even tried. This happens all the time. Someone asks why you didn't call them back, why you said no to something, why you made a certain choice. And instead of just saying, "Because I decided not to," you give them a full story. You explain your day, your mood, your reasons. You justify, and most of the time it doesn't help. They still don't agree. They still think you're wrong. Or worse, they use your explanation against you. They find something in your words to twist, something to make you feel small. You're not imagining this. It really happens. And the truth is, you don't owe everyone an explanation. You don't need to defend every choice you make. You don't need to prove that you're reasonable, smart, or good enough. Some people will understand you without needing every detail, and some people won't understand you even if you give them 100 reasons. That's just how it is. So why do we do it? Why do we feel this need to explain ourselves? Why does it feel wrong to just say, "I chose this," and leave it at that? Because somewhere along the way, we learned that our choices aren't valid unless someone else agrees. We learned that we need permission. We learned that silence looks like guilt. But that's not true. Your choices are yours, your life is yours, and you don't need anyone's approval to live it. If you're enjoying this message, subscribe, leave a like, and share this with someone who needs it. Now, let's continue. And the real reason this happens is not what most people think. Let's start with something simple. Think about the last time someone asked you why you did something. Maybe it was small. Why you bought that shirt, why you didn't answer the phone, why you left early from a gathering. And you gave them an answer. A full, detailed answer. Now ask yourself this. Did they really need to know? Or were they just testing you? Because here's what most people don't realize. When someone asks you to justify yourself, they're not always looking for information. They're looking for control. They want to see if you'll bend. They want to see if you'll scramble to make them happy. And when you explain yourself, you're giving them exactly that. You're showing them that their opinion matters more than your decision. You're telling them that you need their approval. This doesn't mean everyone who asks a question is trying to control you. Sometimes people are just curious, sometimes they care. But you can feel the difference. You know when someone is asking because they want to understand, and when someone is asking because they want you to defend yourself. The ones who want you to defend yourself, they don't accept your answers, they keep pushing. They say things like, "But still," or "I just don't understand why you would," or "That doesn't make sense to me." And that's when you know. They're not looking for clarity. They're looking for you to doubt yourself. So what do? You stop playing the game. You stop giving them paragraphs when a sentence will do. You stop trying to convince people who don't want to be convinced. You say, "I decided this works for me," or "I'm not doing that," or even just "because I chose not to." And then you stop talking. You let the silence sit there. You don't fill it with more words, more reasons, more proof that you're not a bad person. Because you're not. And you don't need to prove it. But here's the part most people get stuck on. They think if they don't explain, people will think they're rude. They'll think they're cold. They'll think something is wrong. But there's something deeper. Here's what happens when you stop justifying yourself. Some people get uncomfortable. They're used to you explaining. They're used to you giving reasons. And when you don't, they don't know what to do. So they push harder. They ask more questions. They act confused or hurt. And this is where most people break. They feel guilty. They think, maybe I should just explain. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe I'm hurting them. But let me tell you something. If someone feels hurt because you didn't give them a full explanation of your personal choice, that's not your problem. That's theirs. You're not responsible for managing other people's feelings about your decisions. You're not responsible for making everyone comfortable with how you live, your life. Let's say you decide not to go to a family gathering. You have your reasons. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you don't want to be around certain people. Maybe you just need time alone. Whatever it is, it's your reason. It's valid. Now, someone calls you. They ask why you're not coming. You say, "I'm not going to make it this time." And they say, "Why not? What's wrong? Did something happen?" Here's where it starts. If you say, "I'm just tired," they'll say, "But you can rest. Later. It's only a few hours." If you say, "I'm not feeling well," they'll say, "What's wrong? Do you need anything?" If you say, "I have other plans," they'll say, "What plans? Can't you cancel?" See how it works? Every reason you give becomes something they can argue with. Every explanation becomes a door they can push open. But if you just say, "I've decided not to go," and nothing else, there's nothing to argue. There's no door to push. There's just your decision. Will they be happy? Maybe not. Will they understand? Maybe not. But that's okay, because your life is not about making other people happy with every choice you make. Does this sound familiar? Have you been stuck in this loop, explaining and re-explaining, trying to make people accept your decisions? And this is where most people get hurt. The problem is not that you explain yourself once. The problem is that you keep doing it over and over with the same people. You have someone in your life who never accepts your answers. No matter what you say, they find something wrong with it. No matter how much you explain, it's never enough. And every time you try again, you think, maybe if I say it differently, they'll understand. Maybe if I give them more detail, they'll see my side. But they don't, because they're not trying to understand. They're trying to make you feel like you owe them something. Let me be very clear about this. You don't owe anyone your reasons, not your friends, not your family, not your partner, not anyone. If you want to share your reasons, that's fine. If it feels good to talk about why you made a choice, go ahead. But you should never feel forced to do it. You should never feel like your decision isn't real until someone else approves it. Think about this. When you make a choice that feels right to you, do you need someone else to agree before you believe in it? Or do you already know it's right, deep down, before anyone else says a word? Most of the time you already know. You don't need permission, you don't need validation. You just need to trust yourself. But we've been taught not to trust ourselves. We've been taught that if we can't explain something in a way that satisfies everyone, then maybe we're wrong. Maybe we didn't think it through. Maybe we're being selfish, and that's how people control you. Not with force, not with threats, just by making you feel like you need to justify every single thing you do. So here's what changes everything. You stop treating your decisions like they're up for debate. You stop giving people the power to question you into doubt. You make a choice. You own it. And when someone asks why, you give them as much or as little as you want. Not what they demand. Not what makes them comfortable. What feels right to you. But it doesn't stop there. Now let's talk about the people who get angry when you don't explain yourself. You've met them. You say no to something, and they act like you just insulted them. They say things like, "Wow, okay," or "I guess I'm not important enough for an explanation," or "Fine, don't tell me." They make you feel like you did something wrong, like you're being secretive or mean or unfair. And if you're not careful, you'll start explaining just to calm them down, just to make them stop being upset. But here's the truth. Their anger is not about you. It's about control. When you don't justify yourself, you're not giving them control. You're not letting them decide if your choice is acceptable. You're just making the choice and moving on, and that bothers people who are used to having a say in everything you do. Let me give you an example. You tell someone you're not available this weekend. They ask why. You say, "I have plans." They say, "What plans?" You say, "Just personal plans." And they get frustrated. "Why can't you just tell me? What's the big secret?" Now, if you give in and tell them, you're teaching them that they can pressure you into answering. You're showing them that if they push hard enough, you'll break. And next time, they'll push even harder. But if you stay calm and say, "I'm just keeping my weekend to myself," and you don't add anything else, they learn something different. They learn that you're not going to be pressured, that your boundaries are real. Will they like it? Probably not. Will they try to make you feel bad? Maybe. But that's their problem, not yours. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to be cold. You can say it kindly. But you also don't need to crumble every time someone acts upset, because here's what happens over time. The people who respect you will accept your boundaries. They'll stop pushing. They'll trust that you know what you're doing, and the people who don't respect you, they'll keep trying. But eventually, they'll realize you're not someone they can control. And that's when things get clearer. And it gets clearer once you see the next part. There's another thing that happens when you stop justifying yourself. You start to notice how much time and energy you were wasting. Think about it. How many hours have you spent explaining yourself to people who weren't even listening? How many times have you gone over the same reasons, the same details, trying to make someone understand something they didn't want to understand? All that time could have been spent on something that actually matters, on something that makes you feel good, on people who already respect you, but instead, you were stuck in these long, exhausting conversations, defending choices that didn't need defending. And the worst part? It didn't even work. After all that effort, they still didn't agree. They still thought you were wrong, or they acted like they understood, but then brought it up again later, questioning you all over again. So let me ask you this. What are you really losing if you stop explaining yourself? Are you losing respect? No. People who respect you don't need a full explanation for every decision. Are you losing relationships? Maybe. But if a relationship only works when you constantly justify yourself, is that really a relationship worth keeping? I'm not saying you should never explain anything. I'm not saying you should be cold or closed off. What I'm saying is this. You get to choose when and how much you explain. Not them. You. If someone asks you something and you feel like sharing, share. If you don't. It's that simple. You don't need a good reason not to explain. I don't feel like it is reason enough. And here's something else. The less you explain, the more people respect you. I know that sounds backwards. You'd think people would respect you more if you're open and communicative. But that's not always true. When you explain everything, people start to see you as someone who needs approval. Someone who's unsure. Someone who can be pushed around. But when you make decisions without needing everyone's blessing, people see you differently. They see someone who knows what they want, someone who's confident, someone who doesn't need permission to live their own life. Does this sound familiar? Have you noticed this shift when you've stopped over-explaining? But here's the part most people overlook. Let's talk about guilt, because that's really what keeps people explaining themselves over and over. You stop explaining and you feel guilty. You feel like you're being difficult, like you're not being open enough, like you're pushing people away. And that guilt is powerful. It makes you second-guess yourself. It makes you think, maybe I should just tell them, maybe it's not a big deal, maybe I'm overreacting. But here's the thing about guilt. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Guilt is often just the feeling of breaking an old habit. The habit of putting everyone else's comfort above your own. The habit of needing approval. The habit of thinking that your choices only matter if other people agree with them. When you break that habit, it feels strange. It feels uncomfortable. And your brain tries to pull you back by making you feel guilty, but you have to push through that. You have to sit with the discomfort and remind yourself that you're not doing anything wrong. You're just setting boundaries. You're just living your life on your own terms. Let me tell you what happens after you push through the guilt a few times. It gets easier. The guilt fades, and you start to feel something else. Relief, freedom, peace. You realize that you don't need to carry the weight of everyone else's opinions. You don't need to make sure everyone understands every choice you make. You can just live. You can just be. And the people who matter, they don't need all the explanations anyway. They trust you. They know you're doing what's best for you. And they support you without needing every detail. The people who don't matter, they'll keep demanding explanations. But you'll stop caring, because you'll realize that their approval was never necessary in the first place. So if you're feeling guilty right now, if you're wondering if it's okay to stop explaining yourself so much, let me tell you clearly, it's okay. It's more than okay. It's necessary. You deserve to make choices without having to defend them. You deserve to live without constant interrogation. You deserve peace, but there's something deeper. Here's the deeper truth. When you justify yourself constantly, you're teaching people that your decisions are negotiable. You're showing them that if they question you enough, you'll reconsider. If they push hard enough, you'll change your mind. If they make you feel bad enough, you'll give in. And once people learn that about you, they'll use it. Not because they're bad people, just because it works, because you've shown them that it works, so they'll keep questioning, they'll keep pushing, and you'll keep explaining, defending, justifying, until you're exhausted and resentful, and you don't even remember why you made the choice in the first place. But when you stop justifying, you're teaching people something different. You're teaching them that your decisions are final, that you've thought about it, you've made your choice, and that's the end of the discussion. At first, they won't like it. They'll test you. They'll see if you really mean it. They'll try the old tactics, guilt, anger, confusion, to see if they can still get you to break. But if you stay firm, they'll eventually accept it. They'll realize that you're not someone who can be talked out of your own decisions, and they'll stop trying. Now, does this mean you should never listen to advice? Does this mean you should never consider other perspectives? No. Of course not. If someone you trust has a genuine concern, listen. If someone offers a perspective you hadn't thought of, consider it. But there's a difference between listening and justifying. Listening is when you take in what someone says, think about it, and then make your own decision. Justifying is when you scramble to prove that your decision is acceptable to them. You can listen without justifying. You can consider someone's opinion without needing their approval. And here's the key. Even after you listen, even after you consider their perspective, the final decision is still yours. You don't owe them a change of mind. You don't owe them agreement. You just owe them respect. And respect doesn't mean doing what they want. It means treating their opinion as one opinion, not the law. Have you felt this? Have you been stuck trying to prove yourself to people who won't ever be satisfied? And this is where most people get hurt. Let me tell you what happens when you finally stop justifying yourself to the wrong people. First, you'll feel lighter, like you've been carrying a heavy bag, and you finally put it down. You'll realize how much energy you were spending on something that didn't matter. Second, you'll start seeing people more clearly. You'll notice who respects your choices and who doesn't, who trusts you and who tries to control you, who adds to your life and who drains it. And third, you'll start making better decisions. Because when you're not worried about how you'll explain every choice to everyone, you can focus on what actually feels right to you. You can listen to yourself instead of trying to predict what everyone else will think. This doesn't mean you become closed off. It doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It just means you stop letting their need for explanations run your life. You'll still share things with the people you trust. You'll still talk about your choices with people who genuinely care. But you'll do it because you want to, not because you feel like you have to, and the difference is everything. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but what if they really do need to know? What if it's important? Then tell them. If someone genuinely needs information and you want to share it, share it. But most of the time, people don't need to know. They just want to know. And there's a big difference. Your job is not to satisfy everyone's curiosity. Your job is not to make everyone comfortable with your life. Your job is to live in a way that feels true to you. And when you do that, when you stop wasting time justifying every little thing, you'll find that the right people stick around. The people who love you for who you are, not for how well you can defend yourself. The others, they'll fade away. And you'll realize that's okay. That's not a loss. That's just clarity. Because you deserve people who trust you, who respect you, who don't need a presentation every time you make a choice. But here's the part most people don't realize until later. The most important lesson is this. Your life is yours, not theirs, not your family's, not your friends, yours. And you don't need anyone's permission to live it the way you choose. You've spent so much time trying to make your decisions make sense to other people, trying to get them to agree, trying to prove that you're not wrong, not selfish, not unreasonable. But you were never wrong. You were just living. And living doesn't require a defense. When you stop justifying yourself, you're not being rude, you're not being secretive, you're not being difficult, you're just being honest about something very simple. This is my choice and I'm okay with it. That's all you need, that's all anyone needs. Some people will understand, some won't. And that's fine. because your peace is not dependent on their understanding. Your worth is not measured by how well you can explain yourself. You are allowed to make choices that other people don't understand. You are allowed to say no without a reason. You are allowed to live your life without turning every decision into a debate. And when you do this, when you finally stop explaining yourself to people who will never be satisfied, something beautiful happens. You get your life back. You stop wasting time on conversations that go nowhere. You stop feeling small because someone questioned you. You stop doubting yourself just because someone else doesn't agree. You start living with more peace, more confidence, more clarity. So if there's one thing you take from this, let it be this. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you choose to live. You don't need to justify your existence, you just need to live it. Make your choices, own them, and let the people who can't accept that figure out their own feelings. That's their work, not yours. Your work is to live honestly, peacefully, and true to yourself. And that's enough. If this message helped you, subscribe so you don't miss the next reflection, leave a like, and share this with someone who needs to hear this today. You deserve to live without constantly defending yourself. And starting today, you can.